Climate Emergency Committee members Aspen Murray and Brogan Stewart hosted an eco-anxiety support group event. Murray and Stewart sat down with Local 514 to discuss the event and the committee. Their goal, as members of the committee, is to offer an inclusive, safe, and empowering space where students and others can come and share their thoughts and feelings about the climate crisis. By being offered such a space, the hope is that Montrealers and others will be able to take action towards a more sustainable future.
So my name is Brogan Stewart. I'm a PhD candidate in environmental science at Concordia University. I've been a member of the Climate Emergency Committee since 2019 when it started. I'm one of the founding members. Yeah, and we started the committee because there's a lot of us here in the geography department that study the environment and climate change. And a lot of us felt like we were on our own looking into these things and reading about them and researching them, but we weren't really doing anything about it collectively, or like we were doing research, but we weren't doing things about it as a group or within the university. So we started this group so that we could have different projects around campus and in the wider Montreal area that address climate change and climate change solutions.
Hi, my name is Aspen Murray. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a master's student here in the geography department at Concordia. I'm specifically researching intersections between climate policy and social housing. So I got involved with the Climate Emergency Committee this semester, and I kind of came to the committee with the idea of starting an eco-anxiety peer support group. And it's ended up that the Climate Emergency Committee has been such a wonderful home for the project. And yeah, I'm just super excited about it.
Great. When did the Climate Emergency come to fall?
So the Climate Emergency Committee started in 2019, so almost 5 years ago this January. And we've had a lot of people cycle through that have either graduated from the beginning or are now, were undergrads at that time and are now doing PhDs. We also are made up of undergraduates, graduate students, and faculty within the group. So the Climate Emergency Committee has a ton of different projects going on right now, and we've also had ones in the past. So for instance, we created a game called Climate Jeopardy, where we go to different high schools and CEGEPs, and we teach about climate science and do it in like a fun Jeopardy style game show presentation. And so we do a lot of different outreach on climate science outreach. We also are doing a climathon this year, so hopefully it'll happen within the year, where it's kind of like a hackathon and people have to come up with solutions to a climate change problem, and they've got 24 to 48 hours to do so, and it's a competition for a cash prize. Another initiative we have is the Ecosia initiative. So we're trying to get Ecosia as the main search engine here at Concordia, where every time somebody uses it, they plant trees on behalf of the money that goes towards advertisements, they plant trees. So even if someone were to use that search engine to search Google and then use Google, they plant some trees by doing so. So if we had that campus-wide, we would be planting a ton of trees. We also have the Climate Optimism social media campaign, where we're trying to post more about research that's happened that's been positive, or solutions that have occurred, and things that are generally more positive concerning climate change, since a lot of the time in the news they use a lot of doom and gloom narratives. So those are just a few of our projects right now. But of course, we also started the Eco-Anxiety Climate Grief Support Group, which is a new initiative as of this past semester, but will continue on into the winter semester as well.
And what is eco-anxiety?
Eco-anxiety is one of a range of many eco-related emotions that one might feel. In talking with folks, they've identified that they also might feel eco-grief or like eco-anger as well, all of which are totally valid. But specifically when we're talking about eco-anxiety, a lot of people define it as basically this like stress-related or anxiety response that one might have to like the negative human-caused impacts of environmental degradation or the climate crisis. Yeah, I think it wasn't very good, but
Okay.
you want to try.
Yeah, sure. So eco-anxiety is when you feel anxiety, stress, or general worry about things that are happening to the environment, like changes. So it could be climate change related, it could be pollution, it could be the plastic problem. And these are generally caused by human activities.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add to that, I guess, to say a lot of people feel anxiety because they feel this like lack of control over a situation. So anxiety would be like the body's response to trying to deal with these like big emotions and feelings. So it's very valid and understandable that a lot of people would feel very anxious as a result of these environmental issues. Actually, we've had 2 sessions of the eco-anxiety and eco-grief peer support group now, but as Brogan mentioned earlier, it's an initiative that the CEC started this semester that will lead into the winter. We've started it on the downtown campus, but we'll also be gearing it up on the Loyola campus after the holiday break as well, which is amazing. So it's happening bi-weekly. But our first 2 events, so it's a basically hour and 15, hour and a half minute event where we invite students to come. It's a supportive peer-to-peer led space where we're basically allowing people to be supportive to one another and unpack their big feelings about the climate crisis or in general environmental issues together. So how we've started it out is we've left it pretty open, kind of introducing the group in these 2 sessions and giving people like a very, like as I mentioned, a very supportive space to talk about some of their feelings. However, we have a lot of big plans for after the break to not only have sessions like this, but to also bring in guest speakers such as researchers who study eco-anxiety as well as climate hope to sort of allow people to potentially transform their eco-anxiety into eco-action. And we also potentially want to kind of do activities where people are taking a more like hands-on approach to tackling their eco-anxiety.
Great. Next one, I think already you also included. How is this a helpful way to address eco-anxiety? Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think this is like getting together as a support group and just getting together as a community is really helpful for eco-anxiety and climate grief because all of a sudden you're not alone anymore. These feelings these huge feelings that you have that you can't control, because a lot of these are big global issues that as an individual we can't change. So just getting together with a bunch of different people who feel similar things and feel like they're not in control can be really helpful just to get, again, that sense of community. Also, we tend to lead in order to be actionable with these feelings. So far we've a lot of the time just talked about it, but we encourage people to join the Climate Emergency Committee so that they can be actionable and join into different projects in order to feel like they're doing something.
Mm-hmm. And I know for myself, like every time I leave a Climate Emergency Committee meeting, like today we had a meeting for an example, and I just left feeling so much better than when I came because just sitting in a room and as well with the CEC, like there's so many projects happening at once. And so hearing from each person what they're working on and you see like their eyes light up as they talk about the cool climate project that they're working on, it's like, it's such an amazing space to be a part of, and it really helps with those feelings of eco-anxiety because you see all of the work that everyone's doing. So definitely it's really, we want to kind of hold that communal space within the support group for people to not be afraid to name their feelings and to just be in community with other people, but also to kind of let them know, you know, there are things that you can do and here are some of the projects that we have that you can get involved in.
Yes. What can people who feel hopeless about climate change do somehow?
I feel like, again, what we just said, like having more, getting involved in different projects, but also advocacy. So talking to people about climate change so that we're all on the same page together and we can work towards solutions from the bottom up. I think a misconception is that it's up to the individual to make changes, where it is actually we need the whole system to change. But if we get enough people working on these things from the bottom up, then that's when real change will happen.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's like, and some of our group members, like we've had conversations too about, because a lot of people who consider themselves environmentalists or who care about the planet, I think a lot of us go through this phase where we feel super individualistic, or like you try to adopt like a zero waste lifestyle or something. And while making those changes it's really important, honestly, it is, and it all has power and meaning. But at the same time, that in and of itself is so anxiety inducing, because the second you make a little mistake, you feel like you're failing not only yourself but also the planet. So to be able to come into a space where you're with other people and you're working on something together, it's like you feel like you're in a sense of community. And I think especially like with large social issues, having a community is really, really important to like stay motivated and to keep going, because otherwise you can get really burnt out. And so I really like that that's what the support group does, and also what the Climate Emergency Committee does. And I totally agree with Brogan. Like we need to stick together and we need to work together in order to solve the climate crisis.
And lastly, what are beneficial methods to take action against climate change and put more pressure on our governments?
Do you want to talk maybe about the teaching or the education?
Yeah, sure.
Thing? That might be cool.
So in 2019, at the very beginning of the Climate Emergency Committee, we sent letters to the Board of Education and then to like 200 different high schools and CEGEPs around Quebec, saying that they need to include climate change in the curriculum, that this is super important. People need to be informed about what is happening. I know for myself, I didn't take any climate science classes until I got to university, and I chose to be in those classes. It wasn't just part of the curriculum already. So that was 5 years ago when we started this, and we've always said this needs to happen, this needs to be in the curriculum. So recently, the Minister of Education announced that they're gonna make climate science mandatory within the curriculum by 2029. Right now it's 2023, that's so far away. And so we think that this needs to happen before then. So we have a new initiative, we're just gonna start at this upcoming winter semester, 2024, and we think that we need to push for climate change in the curriculum now in 2024, 2025, and that this needs to happen so that people are more aware. This isn't a faraway problem, this is a problem that's happening right now. And so we're getting together the subcommittee right now, but we're hoping to push this through the Minister of Education, but also the local and municipal government. The start is, because again, it's not up to the individual, it's up to all of us. And so we need to collectively agree that this is an issue. And if we get more and more people, more boots on the ground saying that this is an issue, then the politicians will take notice. And that's when they'll make change. It's because we're going to be the next generation that's voting. So as long as enough of us actually care, talk about this, potentially, yes, strike or even just make groups like the Climate Emergency Committee and different projects that show that we're passionate about this, then that's when change will potentially happen for the future and for the next generations to come.
Mm-hmm. And I think having as many voices as possible is so important. And I think that ties in as well to like the education advocacy initiative that Brogan's talking about. It's like our students, like the young people who are coming up through the school system right now, are going to experience the most dire impacts of the climate crisis that have ever been experienced before. And these students, like, they need to understand the climate crisis, not only so that they can take action to prevent the worst impacts of it, but also so that they understand and they can take action to like protect themselves and like increase their adaptive capacity, because that's also important. Like, we're already experiencing the impacts of climate change, such as the wildfire smoke that was felt in Montreal and the impacts of the air quality this past summer. So like, it's here. And so education is super, super important. And the more that students are educated, I believe the more that they will be empowered to take action and use their voice and demand to be heard.
And then I have wondered that like, is there this world or Earth is it worth fighting for? Like so I have so.
No, I think it's a really important question, to be honest. And like, I agree with you in a way. Like, climate change has not been the issue that's been at the forefront of my mind lately. Like, there's other things going on, but I would definitely say, like, we know that climate change is an issue that's literally connected to everything. And that's where like climate justice as a framework comes in, because like we know, like the literature tells us that the people who are already most marginalized and already the most vulnerable are going to be the most impacted, and already are the most impacted by climate change. And like we owe it to them to do something, and we can't be hopeless, because we do have the power. And we've also seen that in so many cases with other social movements and social movements that are happening right now. Our voices matter, and everything that we do matters. And therefore, like, we can do something about climate change. And it's actually really important that we do it. Like, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Climate change is a social justice issue, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as well. As you said, everything is so connected. I specifically study animals and climate change, and the biodiversity crisis is tied directly with climate change, and it's just going to exacerbate that loss. And biodiversity is so linked to food security globally. It's linked to everything. You can't just take one thing out of an ecosystem and expect it to balance out all the time. And I think that's the same with the climate crisis right now. Is if it gets worse, it's just going to make all the other issues much worse as well. And it's going to make it so that there's potentially more wars and more conflict between people who are fighting for water security and food security. So it's all connected, and it's all important. Mm-hmm. If you want to join the Climate Emergency Committee, you can email climate.emergency@concordia.ca, and they'll let you know the next meeting times, depending on the semester.
Also encourage you to follow the Climate Emergency Committee's Instagram account. It's where we post a lot of updates about the committee. It's where we'll post updates about when the next eco-anxiety group is going to be held and where. And as well, on our Instagram, we like to post a lot of content about climate optimism, and to, kind of bring a little bit of positivity and hope and motivation into your social media feed. So if you want to follow for any of that, it's just at Climate Emergency Committee on Instagram.